Here is a speech. It's a fairly long speech, so we'll read from the end of it. Given by Lubavitcher Rebbe in 1963, and it's talking about the last day of Passover, which we're approaching now. And the last day of Passover, Shvi Shel Pesach, is the day when the Jewish people went across the sea. The Jewish people got to the sea, and it was the sea was standing in front of them, and the Egyptians were approaching with their whole army behind them, and the desert was on either side of them. So running away was not an option. So they didn't know what to do, and it ended up that the sea split for them, which that's a story in itself. One person jumped into the sea. Nachshon ben Aminadav jumped into the sea, and the sea split, and the Jewish people went across. So that was the time when the Jews actually got out of Egypt. They were actually free from Egypt. They were not. There was no danger. Egypt posed no danger to them anymore. All the soldiers of the whole Egyptian army were drowned. They were all drowned. So, I mean, by the way, the future redemption is not going to be that way. There's not going to be necessarily, our enemies will not drown, or they won't be killed or destroyed. They'll all be transformed. They'll just become normal human beings. Okay, so the Jews getting out of Egypt, there was two purposes of going out of Egypt. One purpose was to get out of Egypt, and the other was to go to receive the Torah, to be free from Egypt, and to be free to get the Torah and do what it says in the Torah, go to the land of Israel and use the Torah in the land of Israel to perfect the world. So that's the purpose of the Jewish people, and that's the whole story. So on the seventh day of Passover, that's the day when the sea split, and that's what we celebrate. And also, by the way, we have a custom in Israel, it's on the same day. Outside of Israel, it's the day after, is Acharon Shel Pesach, after to make what's called the Hasidim, especially Hasidic Chabad, they make a Mashiach meal. They make a Mashiach meal at the end of the day. It'll be the end of Shabbat. By the way, for those of you who don't know, this Shabbat, it's a custom for Jews to stay awake all night. Stay awake on Shvi Shel Pesach. You stay awake all night. There's a few times in the week in the year we stay awake all night, but this is one of them. Stay awake all night. Okay. So the Jews got out of it. Now it says there's two questions the Rebbe asks over here. There's two different. There's one midrash, and one of them is simply on a sentence that says in the Torah. The midrash says that when the Jews went across the sea, as from the ground there grew up trees, fruit trees, and the Jews took the fruits and they gave them to the birds, and the birds sang together with the Jews praises to God, especially the last praise, the famous song on the sea that's written in the Torah. And the Jews said, so the Rebbe asks, what's the purpose of that? What God was just showing off? What did he split the sea? What does he have to make trees grow up from the ground and feed fruits to the birds, and the birds sing together with the Jews? Apparently, this is a totally unnecessary miracle. And that can't be. Everything that God does is necessary. God doesn't do anything unnecessarily. Everything has a point to it and a reason for it. So what's the point? Another question is, when it says when the Jews went across the sea, it says that the water stood for them as a wall on their right and on their left. And the rabbis say that this is because on the merit of learning Torah and on the merit of prayer. The left side, that's prayer. It's like left side is like fire, power going up. And Torah comes down from above. That's like water. That's the right side. So the Rebbe said, what do you need that for also? What's the point? Right? That God could have just jumped them over the sea. It was such a big problem. Not only that, the fact of the matter is that the Jews didn't really have to go over the sea. If you look at a map, you'll see that to go from Egypt to Israel, you don't have to cross over that sea. And in fact, the Jews didn't cross over. They went into the sea. They made a U-turn in the middle of the sea, and they came out a mile or whatever, 2 miles later. How long was this? was the line of Jews, that there was about 3 million Jews. So you make a line that long. How long is it? I don't know, 5 miles, whatever it is. So the Jews went into the sea, the sea, and they made like a turn, a left turn or a right turn, and they came out on the same side that they went in. So they didn't really go across the sea. And you can't say that the purpose was to kill the Egyptians, because God had a lot of, he showed with the 10 plagues, he had a lot of weapons, a lot of options to kill the Egyptians with them. Okay, so what's going on over here? So the Rebbe said, okay, this is all a preparation for the giving of the Torah. This is all a preparation for the giving of the Torah. When the sea split, it says that all the waters in the world split. All the waters, including Shemayim. Shemayim is also the word, Shemayim contains the word water. All the heavens are like the ocean. In the ocean, there's all these weird squids and giant whales and everything. You don't see them. The same thing in the heavens. There's even more giant angels, and we don't see them also. So the heavens are concealing spirituality. Or we can say the physical world conceals the heavens. However it is, it's concealed from us. And when God split all of the heavens, so he split also on anything that concealed God. The spiritual worlds conceal God. The spiritual worlds also concealed. So when God split that, everybody saw God. And that was a preparation for what was going to be on Mount Sinai. And Mount Sinai, they all saw God and they heard God. Okay, so it says that therefore, so the Rebbe asked, why is it that the walls, that the river stood like a wall on the right side and on the left side? It's because in the merit of the Torah that they were going to learn, and in the merit of the prayer. And not only that, it was in the merit that the Jews were willing to adapt these two opposite ways of serving God. The Torah brings godliness down into the world, and prayer brings us away from the world to God. And usually people are either one or the other. Either they're connected to God's spiritual worlds and they don't want anything to do with this world, or they're connected to the world, that's the Torah. They're connected to the world and they're not so interested in being spiritually emotional. Generally speaking, the Torah is intellectual and the prayer is emotional. Usually emotional people don't use their intellect that much, and intellectual people don't use their emotions that much. The main thing, so the Jews, by taking both of these, all the Jews willing to adapt these two opposite ways of serving God, so showing that they're willing to, how do you say, overcome their own natures and go out of their nature to be able to do both sides, to also be emotional and also intellectual, is in that merit God saw that, oh, they're ready to receive the Torah. They're ready to receive the Torah. Okay, here we go. So it says, that's what it says, the Torah. Good. You have to understand this, what we said before about the splitting of the sea, that they had was a preparation for getting the Torah, that they were willing to serve God in both ways, both to be clinging to God and to and to be interested in bringing God into the world. Also prayer and learning Torah together. This is relevant to receiving the Torah. This is on the merit of that they had that attitude, that they were open and they were willing to do anything that God asks, whether emotional or intellectual. That's to receive the Torah. And regarding, so Redevin is that for saving themselves from the Egyptians, as a Rapnem and them Kitrug, and taking away from Elu ve'elu, that it says that all the angels were saying to God, don't save the Jews. They were worshiping idols also. In Egypt, they also worshipped idols. I mean, true, they held on to their Jewish identity, but you couldn't resist the idolatry of Egypt. I mean, it worked. It was successful. Egypt ruled the whole world. So to get if so, the Jews had a big fault that they had worshipped idols as well. How could they? So maybe they had the merit to receive the Torah, but they didn't have the merit to save them from the Egyptians. This Voltach Lechiora would have been to save them from the Egyptians. It would have been enough, just the merit from one sort of service, either prayer. The Jewish people pray to God. The Egyptians didn't do that, or they're willing to learn the Torah and fix the world up. The Egyptians also didn't willing to do that, and either one of that it should have been enough to serve God. Why did they have to the walls? Why did the wall of why did the sea have to make a wall on the right and on the left? Right? I mean, just simply speaking, right? What God could have done, He could have just made one wall and the rest of the river just flow away, huh? Just flow down. You could have changed the direction of the river or whatever. Just one wall was enough. One wall represents either learning Torah or doing the commandments. That's enough to save them from the Egyptians. Why does there have to be two walls? Well, and especially the merit that they're going to receive the Torah. By means of this will accomplish the Bechira Mikol Amim. When the Jews got the Torah, God chose them from all of the other nations. For what's the Torah? Therefore, why does the Torah have to tell us that the water is a wall for them on the right and on the left? Just the fact that they were willing to learn Torah, that would have been enough to save them from the Egyptians. Nit plays by the Hemshech, the Gamar Kriyas Yam Suf, and not only by when they finished going across Yam Suf, the river, nor oich by the Techila, even in the beginning. By Yavo, it says that they went into the river. This is relevant nor to their Hatzalah from the Yitzhak, from Galus Misraim. What is this connected to the going out of Egypt? Why do they have to have two walls? Why two merits? Is the beer? The explanation is like this. Good morning. Let's see, how do we do this here? 1 second. 1 minute. Oh, here we go. Good. The whole purpose of going out of Egypt is to receive the Torah. Therefore, immediately by them the first time, when God had gesagt to Moshe, said to Moses, Vegin Yitzias Mitzrayim, that he's going to take the Jews out of Egypt. When was that? By the burning bush, right? By the by the burning bush. God said, I'm going to take the Jews out of Egypt. Hatem de gesagt, he said, I'm going to take the people, the Jews out of Egypt. Ta'avdun et Elokim ala harazeh, and you're going to serve God on this mountain. The burning bush was on Mount Sinai. It was on Mount Sinai. It was later, whatever it is, a year later, however long later, he took the Jews out of Egypt, but it was on that same place. It says, in the merit of this mountain, that the Jews are going to serve me on this mountain, and so they're going to accept the Torah. That's why I'm taking them out of Egypt. And also, immediately by the first word, the first commandment from giving of the Torah. What was the first of the 10 commandments? I am God. Anochi Hashem, I am God that took you out of Egypt. So the Torah and going out of Egypt are connected essentially. Essentially, the God took the Jews out of Egypt in order to receive the Torah. And when they received the Torah, the first of the 10 commandments is, I am God that took you out of Egypt. And I don't think there's two gods over here, two powers, whatever. When the Rebbe, and therefore, the Gemara Yitzhak, when did they finish going out of Egypt? Was das is given, which this was, like we said before, in the beginning when the sea split, as Gedarv Zayin in Azoy Oifen, had to be in such a way which can bring Zayin Me'in, something like the whole topic of receiving the Torah. What's the whole idea of receiving the Torah? Nit blois, not only haben sich the Yidden gedarft, that the Jews had to be saved from the evil of Egypt, was das had gekent Zayin durch Avoda in Ein Kav, which this could really have been done just by prayer or just by learning Torah, according to the nature of each Jew, according to his nature, right? Some like to pray more, some like to learn more. To save them from the Egyptians, that would have been enough. By this, you could go away from bad, right? A Jew is found in some, who knows, some bar room in some weird place in Amsterdam or someplace, and he just says, "Praise to God, please God, get me out of here." God does miracles. Nor, but they haben gemusst a Reiskin in Gansen. But the fact is, the Jews, when they left, in order to receive the Torah, they had to go out totally from Metzias, from the whole possibility of limitation. Durach der avoda, by means of serving God in Beider Kavin in two ways. You want to receive the Torah, and going out of Egypt, you could go out one way, but you want to receive the Torah, then that's not sufficient just serving God in one way. Und the Rebbe, so therefore, at the Choma, therefore there had to be a wall from the right side and from the left side. It had to be immediately when they went into the Yam Suf. A tifer bir, that's a deeper explanation in this, is durach dem avoda, but by means of this service. Let me just a little bit bigger. A deeper explanation is durach dem avoda, by means of the service. If you serve God only in one way, is nit nor, not only was men kommt nit zu dem tachlis, you don't get the purpose. Hachana zu matan Torah, receiving the Torah, nor is felt oich in der Yetzirah Mitzrayim. Not only that, you're still remaining in Egypt. Yeder zach, everything was is da lamata, which is in this world. Hatashorish lamayla, has a source in the upper worlds. Right? This world, as we've said so many times, is infinitely important to God. And God, in order to make this world, there's tremendous intention and tremendous, say, secrets that God reveals in this world. In this, something like a human being, right? A human being. What's the main thing of a human being? What he does, what he says. You see the person's, right? There's very little difference between a human being externally, between one of these robots. Now they make robots, right? And that's just, it's amazing how they look like people, they talk like people, they move like people, right? But they don't have an internal makeup like human beings do. Physical, all of the intestines, with all the lungs, with all the mind, with all of this, and then there's all the nerves and all the things. It's much more complicated than a robot is. Why? Because people are really important, and robots are not so important. Maybe they're expensive, but they're not really important, right? If you break a robot, it's like breaking somebody's a car or something like that. You have to pay, but you're not guilty of murder. A human being is alive. The same thing with the world. The fact of the matter is, everything in the world is alive. And there's deep, deep secrets in every detail, just like a human being. And the alive is that there's all these organs and veins and arteries and nerves and things. That's a whole, every human being is like a whole universe inside of him. So the same thing, every detail of the world. But the details of the world, the inner aspects of the world, that's the spiritual. That's the spiritual world. But the main thing is the physical world. But if you want to understand how important the world is, you have to have a little bit, understanding of these spiritual levels. So it says everything in the world has some sort of a source above. The source from Egypt, and the Leumatzah, the bad Egypt, Vashtirtsu Torah, which prevents Jews from learning Torah and doing the commandments, and the Efshario, that's what Egypt is. Egypt is anything in the world which deters a Jew from doing the Torah and the commandments. And the Efsharios of them, and the possibility that there can be such a thing as Egypt, is Mitzrayim, the Kedusha, comes from, from what's called Egypt of holiness. How can there be Egypt of holiness? So the holiness is something, is doing Torah and the commandments. And Egypt is preventing you from doing the Torah and the commandments. How can it possibly be? Mitzrayim the Kedusha, holy Egypt, means as mendinta ibishta, we serve God in an oifrim from Meitzer V'Gavul, in a limited way. In a limited way. That's one sort of how do you say, the downside of being religious. You're being religious, you do the commandments, that's it. You made it. You're religious. And Shabbat, you don't do any bad things. you sit and you learn the Torah. You do what you're supposed to do. You're a religious Jew. It doesn't demand anything personally from you. Right? Maybe you put on the garments, you put on a hat, you put on tzitzis, you do what you're supposed to do. But you inside, let's say you don't do anything bad, but you're not really going out of yourself. You're not enthusiastic. You're not leaving yourself. So there can be what's called limitations of holiness. Now, the limitations of holiness, that's what causes eventually the limitations of opposite of holiness. How is it? They said some big rabbi that used to sit and learn day and night, and someone asked him, why do you learn day and night? He said, listen, if I would stop learning for 1 hour, then that would cause another Jew that he would stop learning for 2 hours. And then that would come down that another Jew would stop learning for 3 hours. And eventually it would come down that another Jew didn't learn Torah at all. And eventually it would come down that another Jew would start doing bad things and negative things on Shabbat. And know that, so in other words, holiness is the source of all good in the world. If there's less holiness, then there's less good in the world. So he says, therefore, when a person has what's called Egypt, holy Egypt, he learns Torah, he does the commandments, he says, that's enough, right? He looks in the mirror, he says, look, I got a beard, I have tzitzis, that's enough. I've done it enough, I'm a religious Jew, look at me, who I am, this is so wonderful. And it is wonderful, right? Like the Rebbe said, and I've said it so many times before, you have to be happy with what you've got, but you should never be satisfied. Spiritually, never be satisfied. You can be satisfied with what you have physically, but spiritually you should never be satisfied. And of course, if a person doesn't have enough money, a lot of money, he can't give a lot of charity. So money, it becomes a spiritual thing. The nature of the animal soul is that it wants to rest. It wants to take it easy. It wants to be in its comfort zone. So once you become religious and you're a religious Jew and you found your comfort zone, that's enough, right? It says that's called Egypt. That's called Mitzrayim of holiness. So therefore, there can be the limitations presented to us by our natural animal soul, that we get really lazy and we don't want to learn Torah at all, or from the godly soul, which says you've learned enough Torah, you've done enough commandments, given enough charity. The Rebbe, so therefore, is if you serve God only in a limited way, which is called holy Egypt, is men noch nit bevarent from Mitzrayim. You're still not free from Egypt of the bad side. If you limit yourself in giving charity and giving and praying and learning, etc., eventually you're going to see that you're going to lose your temper and you can get depressed and you can get aggressive and you can get addictive, and because you've set limits for yourself. So if so, you've sort of made yourself into God and you call the shots. Now, of course, the Rebbe is requesting a lot from us, but he's just requesting the truth. Can we live up to this? Listen, at least we can know that there is such a thing and that we can have this goal. Namely, to be totally devoted to being a servant of the Creator in everything we do, in our job, in our home, in our family. In a moment, because in this very moment is arose from Mitzrayim Belumasa. You've left Egypt from the bad side. Erhat es by zich. Therefore, he negated, he destroyed. Is I'm sorry, by zich mevatel geven is vibalt as der shorish. Therefore, because the source of Egypt of the bad side that comes from Egypt of the holy side is nach farbliven. So therefore, there remains as nachamol zayin. It can also that he can go back chozer v'ni, or he can go back and the bad inside of him wakes up again. The weg to verborgen, the way to prevent of oneself from Egypt of the bad side, is a roiskein by going out from Egypt of holiness. Mainly serving God in all akavim, in all the ways, whether prayer, whether emotional or intellectual. That's why it says that the Yam Suf, that the river, the sea, when they went over the sea, that it stood like a wall on the right and on the left, to show us that you want to go out of Egypt and you want to go to receive the Torah, is you have to have the right and the left, also learning Torah and also prayer. Also intellect and also emotion. Prayer is supposed to be emotion. Also in such service, versus can kegen that you go against your nature and against your own, how do you say, selfishness, your comfort zone. According to this, now we can also understand why it's a mitzvah to remind going out of Egypt every day. We're supposed to remember Kol Yemei Chayecha. We're supposed to mention going out of Egypt every single day. In our prayers, we mention it constantly. You should do this every day. Whether there was noch nidriker from a Benoni, whether a person who is not doing Torah and the commandments at all, that's doing obvious sins, inside there was a tzaddik, and even a person that's a total tzaddik, you have to go out of Egypt every day. By Alam and by everyone, every single day is the same exact commandment, going out of Egypt. Why? Because there's also Egypt of the opposite side. Mele does was a tzaddik. Gomer, Darf, that a tzaddik has to every day remind himself going out of Egypt. This is understandable. Why? Because Varum, a Jew, darf sich dann verbinden mit Nebishter. A Jew has to be attached to God. Was is Ein Sof, and God is infinite. Is wie hoich der tzaddik, no matter how high a tzaddik is, soll nicht stehen in his service as legabi by God who is always above us. And that's what the Rebbe said, never be satisfied. Therefore, you have to you have to go out of your limitations. Und der Rebbe, and therefore, darfer all tug, every day he has to go out from his limitations in which he is found in himself and go higher. So is aber nicht verstanden, but it's not understood. Wie can men zu neuf fahren the Yetzias Mitzrayim? How can you possibly go out of Egypt from a tzaddik gomer? Was euch sein Mitzrayim, which his Egypt is a level which is very, very high. You could say, okay, you always have to strive for more, right? But why do you have to say you have to go out of Egypt? Where he's in is not really Egypt. It's not, the person's a tzaddik. He loves God with all of his heart, with all of his might. Good, he has to go higher, but what do you mean that the situation he's in is called Egypt? Why is that Egypt? By the way, with this idea, the Hasidim earned themselves a lot of enemies, because the whole religious world was comforting themselves that they were religious. They were religious, and non-religious people, they're, they'll suffer. What can we do? They'll die in the darkness, whatever. And the people who learn Torah, they're saved. Comes along the Alter Rebbe and the Baal Shem Tov, and he says, no, everybody has to do tshuva. Everybody, wherever you are, you have to do tshuva. Exactly the same thing as a person that doesn't do any commandments as a person that does all the commandments. He also has to do tshuva. And the religious people said, what are you trying to do? Or you're saying that nobody's superior to anybody else. So what are we learning Torah for? It says, because mitter yitzia, when a person goes out of Egypt, is a nidrika darga from one lower level, biz the yitzia from Mitzrayim, the le'umazeh, from the gimel klippas atameis the gamri, unzogen as the Allah zayin and mekayim the selber mitzvah. You want to say that a person he doesn't do any Torah, he eats not kosher food, suddenly he puts on tefillin, that person is equal to me, that I learn Torah all the time and I just went up a little higher level. How can that be? Good, I'm going higher, but I'm not going out of Egypt. That person is doing sins. He's going out of Egypt, right? Says Rebbe, wrong. Everyone has to go out of Egypt. The explanation is the highest levels of most spiritual levels of going out of Egypt is connected with going out of Egypt from the bad side. Or but tzaddik, even a tzaddik gomer, zol by zich beschlossen, if a person who is a totally righteous and pure Jew, King David, he makes a decision by himself, a resolution. As he is farim genug, it's enough. The levels where he's at, he's reached a sufficient level, and he can be satisfied where he is. If a person does that, then halt on air is darf that he doesn't have to go any higher. Air The upslots, and therefore that person, he's in Egypt. He's in Egypt, a holy Egypt, but he's still in Egypt. Afilu magor hecher madrega, no matter how high he is aber vigazak free, like we said before. If you're not moving upward, then you are in prison. Mitzrayim the kedusha, because that Egypt, holy Egypt, is a source. True, it's true that you have to. It's very, very much lower than where you are. When the sin is come, but that's what causes Egypt of the other side. In other words, simply put, if you see that there's a Jew in the world that doesn't know about Torah mitzvahs, it's because of you. Or let's make it a little more. If I see there's a Jew in the world that doesn't know about Torah mitzvahs, it's because of me. It's because I'm satisfied with where I am, so he's satisfied with where he is. Der Weg, the way to Bavarnin, in order to protect ourselves, to save ourselves from Egypt of the bad side, is as Zol Nitan Kain Upshell. There shouldn't be any stopping. There shouldn't be any, self-satisfaction. And making limits for yourself in serving God. That every day in the service has to go, a person has to go higher and higher. Higher and higher doesn't necessarily mean you have to go closer and get further from the world. Sometimes going higher and higher means you have to go out and spread more Judaism. You have to talk to children. You have to talk to older people. You have to talk. You have to do things that you didn't think were possible for yourself. That's going out of Egypt. Doing good things. No matter how high a person is, every day a person has to make the decision as the conduct of the Hasidim, as I felt Flegen, Zogen. The Hasidim used to say, tomorrow is going to be totally different. That's what they would say, some things that would be heard saying before you go to sleep. Right before you go to sleep, you're supposed to say Shema Yisrael and make a sort of an inventory of the day. And they say, listen, what I did today is good, but tomorrow is going to be totally different. According to this, now we can understand why the idea of splitting of the sea had to have also growing up trees from the ground and fruits from the trees. And they gave the fruits from to the birds, and the fegelach, and to the birds. Varum, thus is nit given. This was not a extra miracle, but rather this was a detail in the whole point of going out of Egypt. Is a kernel in a seed. Was me far plants which you plant in the ground. Gefinnen has found already the whole entire tree with all the fruits that come out of it. Which will come from that seed. Need more, even more. Was it's now you find in the seed, it's what's concealed when it's just concealed there. When it's darf nemen inside, it has to take time in order that it should come and be revealed. Und was from the peros zayin and besser, and the more the more quality of the fruits is more time it takes to ripen. Noch mer, even more. Afilu in them, even in the 1 second, here we go. Even in the power of growth, which is in the ground, we also found concealed the growing up of all the trees. So here we have a case of things being hidden and then being revealed. In the ground is already hidden the power of growth, just waiting for a seed to be put in there. And in that seed is hidden a tree. Because the growing of the power of growth, which is in the ground, this is not a really new thing. It's just hidden in the ground. When, at the time of splitting of the sea, as the Jews, they brought about Midzayin Avoda with their service on the right and on the left, that they made the decision that they're going to learn Torah and also pray. They're going to use their mind and also their emotions. As Zal Nizgalat, that there would be revealed everything that was hidden, not only by themselves alone, but also everything that was hidden in the world. Was had Gahat, a sheikhs which had a connection to them. is that in order that Jewish children should know, I'm sorry, I can't explain that they were able to feed the birds. Which sang with the Jews. Seinen is Galagaman, that was revealed the trees, which they had fruits, which were also found concealed in the power of growth, or even deck from Yam on the ground of the floor of the sea. And also the seed, the grain, the seeds, and the peros and the fruits, which were concealed in the hidden seeds, which were concealed in the trees. Oh, so what do we see? The splitting of the sea revealed what was potential. The deck from the Yam, the ground of the sea, is earth, the lowest level of life that there can possibly be. It's dead. Earth is dead. This means, as the Gilui Ha'elam, that what happened when the Jews went across the sea, they just revealed everything that was concealed. In a way, it wasn't a new thing. When the sea revealed, it revealed the ground. Inside of the ground was the power of growth. That was also revealed. Then it was, the ground is the lowest there can be. Is from them, Domen, from the ground, Zayin and Oiskevexen grew up trees, fruits. That's a higher level of life. Plant. Ground is dead. It doesn't move at all. Plants move up. They grow up. True, they're not mobile. They're stuck in the ground, but it's higher level than ground. So in the mineral is found the vegetable, higher. Velchazain and Gaven, a Michael, and they were food that produced food for the fegelach, for the birds. Un, Gavar, and Dam, and Basar, and then it became flesh and blood of the birds. If so, it means that the that the vegetable, the fruits, they became animal, a higher level, birds. Was the fegelach, which birds, there's mitgezungen, they sang together with the Jews. The Jews are humans. So the animals, they joined to a higher level, they sang together with the Jews. And the Jews, they sang to God. So if so, they elevated everything up to God. That was the whole purpose of going out of Egypt and the splitting of the sea, to give the Jews a preview of what their purpose is in the world, to reveal everything which is concealed in every detail, in every mineral, in every plant, in every animal, in every human being. Which this is the ultimate purpose of humanity, is to connect themselves with God. Thus, as this means, by Kriyas Yam Suf, when the sea split, is it Nizgala was revealed the concealment from the mineral by biz, until it can also reveal the dead earth could, when its the potential is revealed, then it can raise up to the level of plant, which can be leveled further to the level of animal, and to human, and to godliness. All of the stories in the Torah, Zayin and Aurora, are teaching from our service in day-to-day life. Ubefrat, and especially the details from what happened in the splitting of the sea. Which splitting of the sea, this was Darv Yedetag, which every day we have to mention, we have to talk about and remind ourselves of going out of Egypt. And that was an essential part of going out of Egypt. That was the culmination of going out of Egypt. When the sea split, they were freed from the Egyptians, and they were free to go and receive the Torah. Yedetag, every single Jew, every single day, Darf a Yid, a Jew, has to bring about by himself, herself, to anplecken, to reveal the helem, the potential, which is in your soul. Und das drückt sich out, and this is expressed in dienen der Rebbe, serving God on Hagbols, without any limitations, in all kavim, in every single way, from the right side and from the left side. Whether it's learning, the right side is like learning Torah, giving charity, and the left side is prayer, going up from. And then is nitnor not only was is varant, which he is protected from Egypt of the bad side, nor is feared zich by him. It is he conducts himself in a way ois their tachlis on the whole purpose of why they left Egypt, namely a preparation for receiving the Torah, and even more, a preparation for the future redemption. Like the rabbis say, ilmole chatu, if it wasn't for the fact that the Jews sinned with the golden calf, as afterward, then they would have there would have been a total redemption. They would have gone into the land of Israel with Moses together. They would have gone to the land of Israel immediately, right? Because they wandered around in the desert for so long, but because of the sin of the golden calf, afterwards the sin that they didn't want to sin with the spies and etc. If the Jews had not sinned, going out of Egypt would have been the Geula Shlema. It would have been the complete redemption back then, 3,000 years ago. There wouldn't have been any expulsions. There wouldn't have been any destructions. There wouldn't be any holocausts, and there wouldn't be any pogroms and problems for the whole world. But because the Jews didn't do properly, so there was. But nevertheless, we're waiting that it's going to happen. It doesn't mean that they lost it and it's taken from them forever. For sure, the future redemption shouldn't be future. It's going to be any second now. It says, then there will be revealed godliness versus behalten, the godliness which is hidden in every human being, in every animal, in every plant, and even in the ground. A zoivisi is given like it was just like in going out of the Yam Suf, when the sea split. When sees in this Gala that there was revealed also the concealment which was even in the physical. It says the Jews will walk on the ground, and the ground will cry out, "Why are you walking on me? Right? I'm doing what God wants. I'm acting like ground. Act like a Jew." Nor by Kriyas Yam Suf, but by going out of Yam Suf, like we said before, by the splitting of the sea, is the Gilui that was revealed temporarily. Thus had gegeben, but it gave a power. It opened up the door, and it also put into a potential that after the giving of the Torah, the Jews would be able to accomplish durech avoda by their service the same giluim, the same revelations that there were in the splitting of the sea, is in an open in a way that's permanent, not just one-time thing. Therefore, Zainen by Groiser Tzadikin, therefore by the greatest of the holiest of Jews, was the same Atdir Geluim, those same revelations as Durech Zain Avoda. I'm sorry. They did have these revelations as Durech Zain Avoda by means of their service. In domim, that they could physical things, they could reveal godliness in them. And there's stories about that's the big miracles that tzaddikim do. One of the biggest ones was Ezekiel, that he brought back to life, like 20,000 dead Jews that had been dead for like 1,000 years. How long was Ezekiel? Let's see, 1,000 years, 800, 600 years. And all there was dry bones, and he brought them all back to life. That's pretty good. You don't see that every day, right? There's a whole religion based on some person that they claim he brought one person back to life. Here he brought tens of thousands of people back to life. Not just people back to life. It wasn't a body that was dead. Bones that had nothing. He brought them, right? How could he do this? He said, because every Jew really has the power to reveal potential of everything. Even, okay, maybe we don't reveal that potential. Only big tzaddikim do, like Ezekiel, or there's also a lot of stories, like it says, the Alter Rebbe, the first Rebbe of Chabad, had a Mol Gezach said, Kukendik Oifa Kora, when he looked at a beam of the roof, is ich sehe jetzt nur Elokus. I see only the godliness which creates this board. God is creating everything, but we don't see it. We have the potential, yes, to see it. That's why in Judaism, the big thing is this big house. That's the essence of Judaism, is a big house. It's called Beit HaMikdash, the holy house. They call it the temple, but that's not the translation. The translation is Beit HaMikdash, a holy house. Beit, it's a house made of bricks. It has a floor, it has a ceiling, it's in a certain place. You're not allowed to break parts of it. It's breakable. Huh? We see that when the first temple was destroyed, it's breakable. A physical place. That's the essence of Judaism, is to reveal the godliness in the physical world. The Bekor of Mamash, and soon, and we see, and it happened when the sea split. We saw it happen, that there grew out fruits, there grew out trees, fruits. They gave it to the birds. All the potential and everything was revealed. Bekor of Mamash, and so very soon, Vet Es Nagala will be revealed to everyone. The Nigla Kavod Avaya, the glory of God, will be revealed, and all flesh will see that it is God that is speaking and creating everything. That's in Isaiah. Every guy is speaking. As Vet Ois Plek, that will be revealed, the Mivet Zen, we can see the word of God, which enlivens everything. And that will be in the future, the Geula Mitit Shlema, and the total redemption by means of Mashiach Tzidkenu, right now, really.